is an ultimate global podcast. Hello, and welcome to our Daily Dose podcast, covering all about day-to-day global affairs. You're listening to Saurabh Kora and George Mavros from Sydney.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's podcast session. I have got Joshua Keras again today joining us again after Tuesday. And I hope you found the three sessions till now quite insightful. We have tried to discuss a lot of trending international affairs in the last 3 days. And I've already been getting a lot of good response. I would also like you to share any suggestions that you have that you want us to share in these sessions. Would love to have your feedback, would love to have your suggestions coming forward. So to start off with today's session, we have a very good news coming from Australia that a total of 20 million coronavirus doses have been administered in Australia, with the Federal Health Minister Greg Hunt, stating that it is 20 million additional points of hope that we are now going to take forward from here. And I think the kind of vaccination rate we have seen in the last 1 or 2 months in Australia has been incredible, Joshua.
Absolutely. I mean, what a phenomenal effort I think our nation has demonstrated in getting us to this point. We are, as I said previously, we are really engaging in immunization rates that are amongst the highest in the world. And I think that's a testament to, Australians' capacity to really draw on that value of teamwork and camaraderie and just, get the job done, so to speak. We're seeing, it makes sense that we're at this rate. And I think we will be, it just is a sign of hope and a light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. Don't you think?
Absolutely. And I also feel that it's now time for the states to think beyond the lockdowns, as we have been discussing now for the last couple of days in our Daily Dose podcast as well. And as was rightly stated by the Treasurer, George Frydenberg, today, that he has called on to states like Queensland and Western Australia to, in fact, open their borders when they touch 70% or when they touch 80%, because they have been quite reluctant in not opening up their borders, even if they reach 70%. Because what some of the states are targeting is that zero case figure, which might not be a possibility in the near future, Joshua.
It's quite the complex situation, isn't it? I think, on one hand, we really should be thinking long term about the implications that this is just going to become another flu. That's it. That's what we're dealing with, where we will require, annual shots, booster shots and whatnot, and then it will settle. But also, it's still the novelty of the whole pandemic is still, 18 months on, still fresh in the minds of some of these state ministers. So it's a tricky situation, and overall, I do think, hopefully by the end of the year, we do gain some, the fear and the concern about the disease is, beginning to settle into a similar feature that we have to, say, the flu or some other communicable disease.
Absolutely. One of the terms that we have been continuously listening to is this popular phrase of pandemic of the unvaccinated, which began from the United States more as a political phrase, less as a message to communicate to the people, more as a phrase to divide two political parties, rather than really communicating the right message. So if we see that the facts really suggest that the hospitalization rates among the unvaccinated adults have been 17 times higher than those who are fully vaccinated. So definitely it's working well with the people who are vaccinated. But by putting it in a phrase of pandemic of the unvaccinated, don't you think it might upset the people who are unvaccinated? Rather than that, it should be that we should be targeting people who are spreading misinformation or disinformation, as we discussed yesterday, among the unvaccinated people.
It's a very good point, and I think that as we are progressing through our the different levels of promotional activity, and as more people are becoming vaccinated, it's pertinent to consider that these individuals who are unvaccinated may be for a host of reasons. I think that when we speak in language that is quite isolating, then it leads to isolation and people get cut off, and families are torn apart by this topic. And so aggressive dialogue, I think, is can be quite harmful to achieving the goal of, in this case, vaccination. It's actually a fun fact, in my field, we have for years now not used the phrase anti-vaxxer because it considered derogatory. We say we just define people as vaccine hesitant or a vaccine refusalist to provide some. By changing that language, we find that we are much more likely to actually have conversations with these people and get closer to coming to a resolution in addressing their concerns and worries. So when I see a pandemic of the unvaccinated, I feel like there's a bit of blame happening here, and that it's only being drawn out because people aren't getting vaccinated. Of course, to some extent that's true, but we shouldn't be so quick to judge. We should more be just goal focused on fixing the problem, as opposed to trying to engage in yet another blame game.
Absolutely. And this kind of a strategy might not work in a democratic society.
Yeah.
As Scott Morrison was also pointing out a few days back, that we have not mandated the vaccines on the people. Instead, we are trying to encourage people to have as much second dose as they can in the coming days, so that we can come out of this lockdown. Because unless and until we don't come out of this lockdown, we cannot think of moving forward with the economies. And this phrase actually began, as I said, from the United States. Then it moved to the European countries. And now today, Gladys Berejiklian from New South Wales also pointed out that it's a pandemic of the unvaccinated. But again, the blame game should not be on the unvaccinated. It should be on the people who are actually spreading the misinformation that the vaccines are not safe, because the facts clearly suggest that if you have taken the 2 doses and if you are doing everything right, then it will be that you will never be hospitalized. Even if you catch COVID-19, you might have some mild symptoms, but you will not be in a condition to get hospitalized. And that's the most important thing, which is critical for us, that it's not leading to a fatality at this time.
Absolutely.
Another thing which is trending around the world, Joshua, is obviously the Afghanistan withdrawal that the US has completed yesterday. And what they are terming it as is that we have won that war, or we have completed that war. Do you think that it's the end of the war? Or, as I was also talking to you another day, that it's the beginning of the next phase, where we are seeing that a lot of US citizens are also demanding for more refugees, and Afghanistan citizens also want more people to help around the world, because we don't see any kind of trends or news coming from Afghanistan, which can be considered as a positive news as of now. So it's still sitting at a quite dicey stage. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that what we are seeing at the moment is, as you've said, rightly said, I think moving in the direction of a new age, American foreign policies. It's been around for since 9/11. So I think it's nearly, very close to 20 years of a particular type of policy, in 2 decades worth. And I think that's changing. I think that as a result of the increased, presence of China and Russia on the international stage, I think that as a result of, the mixed results is the best euphemism I can use of the war in its entirety, and the recent failures, so to speak, of diplomacy reigning. We will see a strong move. I think from what we're seeing there's no need for a prediction here. We are seeing a strong movement and a change of language from the president himself, and his forceful rejection that it was a failure, and he's calling it, as he said, as an extraordinary success. and that's the tale, that's the narrative that America is attempting to get out there at the moment. And I would say that perhaps we are in for some changes in foreign policy as a result of what we've seen unfold over the last few weeks and over the last 20 years.
Yeah, and a lot of support might be required from those countries which are located in the same region as Afghanistan. That's what we can see in the last 2 days, that Pakistan has called on the Western nations to engage with Taliban, and also India has started to engage now with the Taliban. So, uh, just to bring to your context, that India never thought of engaging with Taliban, because they were not even communicating since the time their regime started in August, and it was considered that India will never engage with Taliban in the same way as they were doing. But yesterday we had this news that India has in fact turned the tables, and they have started to engage with Taliban. So they have taken quite a different stance, which will need to be evaluated in the coming days as to what that stance actually is all about. Is it really about supporting Taliban in building the true activities, or is it some sort of back end game which is going on, which we'll come to know in the coming days? By the way, what's happening with your half cut hair? I saw that on Tuesday you were half cut, and now today you are like, how are you
Yes,
feeling? Are you feeling relieved?
I feel complete. I feel it's good to have the other half of my head shaved and haircut. It was a wonderful day. Raised I think just shy of $350, which is just a small thing. I think it's going to a worthy cause to preserve the Daintree rainforest. So yeah, it went well. Thank you for the support.
On the first day of the spring, you got that haircut.
Exactly. I got the rejuvenescent restoration of the face, which was nice. And I like the saying of the charity is cut hair, not trees, which I thought was very good. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a great initiative. Even I was not knowing about that, as I told you one day before, and I
Yeah, I think
researched
it's new.
about that.
I think it's a new one.
Yeah, and a lot of people might not be knowing that. So it's great that you were able to spread that information, communicate that to the people who are watching this, and
Yeah.
probably motivated some of them that they can contribute their share towards the conservation and the kind of good things that we can spread through this particular initiative. Well, I guess this is it for today's podcast. Anything that you want to say before we end today's podcast, Joshua?
No, just thank you so much for the invitation to participate in this fantastic initiative. I'll be sure to be listening in. Thank you so much for having me these past few days.
Yeah, we also hope to see you ahead in more sessions. And we also invite more people to become brand ambassadors and join us for this podcast series. And I hope that we have a great spring ahead. It sounded to me that the weather experts were saying it's going to be a wet spring ahead. So hopefully it's a pleasant spring for all of us here in Sydney. We can come out of the lockdown as soon as possible in the coming times. And also to the entire world who is watching us, that get yourself vaccinated. Do not get into the trap of any misinformation that you are getting. If you are fully vaccinated, be rest assured that your chance of getting hospitalized or your chance of passing away will be very less. So it's time for you to do now. Otherwise, you can end up as one of the stories who is in fact telling us to get vaccinated as a Facebook, because I have seen a lot of Facebook stories who keep on telling us that had I got vaccinated before, it would have been so great for us. So we should not be in that kind of a situation, and instead we should get ourselves vaccinated. Any final message, Joshua, for the people to get vaccinated before we end this podcast?
Sure. Look, as you've rightly said, it is absolutely scientifically and I think morally the correct thing to do. And in relation to misinformation, some hot tips on how to make sure that you're not looking at misinformation is checking the date of when it was released, checking the tone of it. If it's emotional in tone, it should not be considered as factually accurate, because there is going to be subjectivity there. Are they trying to sell anything? If there is a service or a product that they are trying to sell as a result of the opinions expressed in the article or other form of social media post, then you should be concerned about that. And also checking the verifying the sources. Everything must go back to science. Vaccine science is not anything other than is not held accountable to anything other than academic rigor and scientific integrity. So making sure that you're following those rules and going through the checklist when you're reading information, I think is a very good thing to do, especially during this time.
Great. Thank you so much, Joshua. I think you have really said those right words to motivate people to get vaccinated. Well, that's it from today's Daily Dose podcast. Hope to see you tomorrow.
Bye-bye, guys.